Far to the east, where citizens of the known realms have not dared step foot in a millennium, lies a region known as the Forbidden Lands. In light of a recent expedition, spearheaded by the Royal Academy and the Monster Hunters Guild, information about this mysterious place has gradually come to light. In this piece, the Guild aims to collect all of the knowledge gained in the wake of the White Wraith investigation in an orderly and sanctioned manner. The initial push into the Forbidden Lands was broadly considered a daring operation by many in the Hunters Guild. Penetrating into entirely uncharted territory is dangerous at the best of times, and the complete lack of knowledge regarding this region certainly did not inspire confidence. But the charting of the Windward Plains and establishment of relations with the native people of Kunafa soon showed that not only was this expedition viable, it was exceeding all expectations. The research done in the plains resulted in the cataloging of many new species of monster. But more crucially, it revealed the true magnificence of the Forbidden Lands. For this region exists in a perpetual state of seasonal cycles, unlike any climate activity seen anywhere else in the world. Seasons of decay that burst forth into violent weather events that in turn rejuvenate the land into a season of bounty. In such a varied land, new discoveries lie around every corner, and soon enough, the expedition team set its sights on what lay beyond the plains. In the north of the region, hunters had spotted a narrow rock corridor that seemed to lead upstream of the river that flowed into the Windward Plains. The natives of Kunafa later informed guild representatives that this passage led to an entirely different biome. A dense, humid forest from which the river originated. Eager to expand the scope of their research, the expedition team thus ventured north, through the passage and into the region that would come to be known as the Scarlet Forest. The Scarlet Forest is a dense jungle, with high tree canopies standing tall above an untouched wild garden of various majestic flora. Key to this ecosystem's structure is the river that flows through it and continues into the Windward Plains. In the plains, it is an orderly, simple stream. But here in the forest, It is a convoluted network of divergence and convergence, with most of the Scarlet Forest's ground level being covered by its waters. Higher elevated areas, as well as some zones in the center and the east of the hunting ground, are the only places that the river does not reach. In the north, the forest gives way to massive waterfalls, at the top of which lies the water reservoir that feeds this river network. It is this flow of water that defines the structure of the Scarlet Forest, and it was by following it that the expedition team was able to gradually unravel the various mysteries of this area. A cave in the far south of the forest was chosen as the base camp, as it lies protected from monsters and weather alike. But even in this refuge, water finds the eager explorers. No matter where one goes, one is always reminded of the force that truly rules this forest. The Scarlet Forest is dominated by its signature river, and so, when mapping out the region, it is common wisdom to orient oneself around its flow. Starting from the reservoir in the north, it carves a crescent moon shape across the forest, with a small southwestern offshoot being what eventually turns into the stream that flows into the windward plains. The result of this structure is that nearly every corner of the Scarlet Forest is either flooded or adjacent to water, which in turn creates countless humid habitats. Depending on the season, schools of fish thrive in the deeper waters, which sustains various species of leviathan and drakes that feed on them. Insect populations are also abundant, as are birds and other flying creatures. This abundance of water and the resulting food chains make the forest a vibrant and active environment. The center and east of the zone, for example, are covered in beautiful flower fields that shine in a myriad of colors, while other parts of the forest are home to clusters of flesh-eating Venus traps. In the southeast, which is the area with the lowest elevation, a unique species of eastern honeybee creates enormous nests that almost resemble cliff faces. On these massive structures, the bees produce and store their wild honey, which trickles down the comb walls and attracts all manner of creatures, both large and small. But it would be foolish to only look at the floor of a jungle. For as bountiful and varied life on the ground is in the Scarlet Forest, there is an equal diversity to be found in the high canopies of its trees. From colorful birds to large wyvern nests, even the treetops house many different tenants. One of the most interesting characteristics of the trees in this region is that they appear to have an above-average tendency for inosculation, a process in which trunks, branches, vines, and even roots of different trees intertwine and grow together into a wholly new structure. This creates enormous tree hives with fan-like crowns, connected by vineways that are solid and thick enough to be walked on by various creatures, humans included. Beyond the mere natural beauty of the Scarlet Forest, it is also a region full of remnants of past civilizations. While the southern half is generally entirely natural and wild, the northern sections of the forest hold many kinds of different ruined buildings, from small slabs of stone to massive derelict temples. The most impressive ruin is the water reservoir in the far north itself. Ancient walls and dams seem to direct the output from this lake, and the controlled flow manifests in two enormous waterfalls that plummet into the forest depths. From the reservoir's top, one can spy numerous large ruined buildings in the distance that stretch far out into the corners of the forest that the expedition team has so far not explored. The ruins are, however, not the only traces of the ancient past. Inside many of the large inosculated trees, one can sometimes spot odd hexagonal meshes made of an unknown material. While very little is known about the origin and purpose of these structures, their presence inside the tree hives suggests that they predate much of the plant life, which appears to have grown around and into it over time. One does not, however, need to look into the past alone to find civilization in the Scarlet Forest, for this jungle is also home to a tribe of Linians in the present day. They call themselves the Woodwoods, and constitute an entirely novel branch of the Linian taxonomy. While it is not yet determined if they are more closely related to felines or to shakalaka, many other characteristics about them were able to be confirmed. Woodwoods are short, furry creatures with wide mouths that sport sharp teeth, with a pair of tusks protruding out of the mouth in some individuals. They walk upright on their hind legs and seem to lack the ability to take on a quadruped gait. Woodwoods are capable of speaking human languages, with a proficiency level that is, on average, lower than that of a feline but higher than a shakalaka. And like felines, Woodwoods live in a tight tribal society centralized around the various ancient ruins in the region, which these Linians gladly repurpose as their shelter. Woodwoods are territorial, in the sense that they consider the forest their homeland, and will jealously investigate any new arrival. They are, however, also quite reasonable, and often allow other tribes to pass through peacefully, only demanding trade or odd jobs in exchange for safe passage. Indeed, Woodwoods are quite the eager traders, as they highly value odd trinkets that others would not glance at twice. This seems to stem from an almost instinctive desire to adorn their bodies with various ornaments and trophies, from masks to hats to cloaks. This is actually quite similar to the mask traditions seen in Shakalaka. Woodwoods spend much of their time gathering materials like honey and mushrooms throughout the day, retreating to their hideouts as night approaches. On stormy nights, they huddle into specially made sleeping bags crafted from leaves and vines, which hang from the ceiling and can even be found all across the forest. But when the night sky is clear, the Woodwoods gather in large numbers on the roofs of their ruins and hold a merry festival around a bonfire. On these occasions, the Woodwoods gladly cook up any edibles they have on hand, and are even known to share their food with travelers from outside the tribe if they participate in the festival. And so, on nights peppered with starlight, the Scarlet Forest softly murmurs with the chirping festivities of the native Woodwoods. Upon first glance, the title Scarlet Forest may raise a few eyebrows. The vegetation here is broadly green, with an assortment of colorful flowers in select locations. It certainly does not look like a place most aptly described by the word scarlet. The name derives from the very first impression the expedition team got of the region when they first ventured into it. At that time, the massive trees, the ruins, the varied flora and fauna, they were all secondary to a most peculiar property of the forest. The waters of the river were seemingly entirely red in color, creating a distinct scarlet blanket over much of the forest floor. This was, as the team was later told, a sign of the fallow season in the forest. While the fallow turns the windward plains into a dry wasteland where plant life withers, the forest's fallow is characterized by the scarlet water and by persistent dreary rain falling from a cloudy sky. It can be considered a humid season, where rainfall constantly looms as dark clouds build up overhead. While the fallow has numerous effects on the ecosystem, the first order of business for the expedition team was to understand how and why the water turns red during this time. Analysis of the water itself yielded no results. Even when in this colored state, it remains water and is even safe to drink for man and monster alike. The reason for this color has still not been definitively determined, but one hypothesis has become quite popular in the meantime. All across the Scarlet Forest, one may stumble upon tall, thin trees with a characteristic split bark. These are red-sapped trees, and grow almost exclusively on the banks of the Scarlet River. They derive their name from their most characteristic feature, their thick red tree sap, which conspicuously displays the same color as the river's water during the fallow. While it usually only appears as a hard crust on top of the tree's bark, during the fallow this sap liquefies and begins flowing into the river below the trees. While it remains unclear if the sap colors the water or the water colors the sap, it has been broadly suggested that the red sap trees are somehow tied to the scarlet waters of the fallow forest. This hypothesis is supported by the observation that there lies a small area in the center of the forest where the waters never turn red, remaining clear and blue year-round. And, notably, no red sap trees have been found growing in this area. As for why the trees begin to expel their sap in liquid form during the fallow specifically, multiple competing theories have been presented in the past. Generally, it is assumed to be related to the rise in certain insect populations during the fallow, particularly the jewel scarabs. These special beetles are endemic to the Scarlet Forest and can be found here year-round. Jewel scarabs are named after their shiny shells, which come in many different colors and are said to glisten like gemstones. They can easily be recognized by the distinct tapered edge that protrudes from their shell, which is a dull brown compared to their otherwise brilliant colorations. While they can be observed year-round, their numbers seem to increase during the fallow, as they congregate in large groups on red sap trees to feed on the scarlet liquid that flows forth. It has been suggested that the trees expel their sap at this time to coincide with the increased presence of these scarabs, as it might draw some symbiotic benefit from them. What exactly this might be has so far not been discovered. On rare occasions, one might spot a beetle with an especially well-developed shell edge. These are regal jewel scarabs, a rare variation that sports larger body size and a wider shell in general. It is currently unknown if these specimens are a different species or merely a mutation based on environmental factors. A common theory is that jewel scarabs stockpile nutrients during their fertile period, which they then deposit directly into their eggs. Larvae born from nutrient-rich eggs can then grow larger and more ornamental, turning into regal scarabs. With this theory in mind, it might be that the sap of these trees provides the scarabs with an easy way to ensure that their offspring turns regal, and that regal jewel scarabs specifically benefit the red sap trees somehow, perhaps by repelling specific parasites. But until more research can be conducted, this all remains pure speculation. While scarabs and other insects manage to thrive in the humid fallow, other creatures must lay low during this season. Such is the case with the premier bird species of the Scarlet Forest, the Dapperwing. Since their discovery, these birds have become known for their vibrant plumage, which one would never be able to guess if one were to encounter them during the fallow. In this season, Dapperwings take on a muted green color across their entire bodies, as they attempt to blend into the vegetation around them. They spend the fallow sitting on branches and flying as little as possible, a stark contrast to their usual high level of activity across the rest of the year. The reason for this has been theorized to be linked to the structure of this species' wings. Unlike other birds, Dapperwings have thin wing membranes instead of feathered wings. While these membranes allow for easier flying and gliding, they are also believed to be easily weighed down and disrupted by rainfall. As the fallow is a period of regular rain, Dapperwings thus might opt to hide and wait it out, instead of risking injury during a disrupted flight. They, like all animals, know that change is inevitable, and that their time will come. Dapperwings are not the only creatures that hide during the fallow, however. While it is a season primarily defined by its humidity, it is also a time of conflict and violence. The oppressive humidity and rain promote the growth of fungi, while also reducing the presence of various nutritious staple plants that local herbivores rely on. This leads to an overall reduction of large animal life, increasing the desperation and aggression of carnivores. As a result, any creature that does not manage to conceal its presence might end up as a tasty snack for the forest's top dogs. Such is the case for the Mimiphyta, a small rodent-like creature that lives in the forest year-round. As an insectivore, the fallow does not treat it unkindly, as the various beetles and slugs that emerge during this time are numerous enough to reliably feed on. This does, however, also make the Mimiphyta a prime target for predation in this dire season. As it has no weapons to defend itself with, the Mimiphyta instead opts for seasonal camouflage. During the fallow, it nestles among the many mushrooms that grow near trees, and coils its body such that it resembles one of them. When caked in mud and seen under the poor light conditions of a fallow day, a camouflaged Mimiphyta is almost impossible to spot among a crop of fungi. Using its stealth, the Mimiphyta quietly feeds on the insects around it and attempts to avoid being preyed upon. In an environment so thoroughly defined by the presence of water, one monster class will always thrive more than others. Leviathans, quadruped monsters with long bodies that are often well adapted to aquatic life. It is no surprise then that the majority of the mid-sized predators of the Scarlet Forest are indeed Leviathan-class monsters. One of the most dominant mid-sized species during the fallow is the Gajios, a bulky leviathan with a characteristically long and spiked snout. These solitary predators hunt at the water's edge, where they hide under the surface with the tip of their snout exposed. Once prey comes too close, the Gajios leaps out with its maw wide open, attempting to latch onto its victim and drag it into the water. Most of the time, the thrashing and slashing of the Gajios' spiked snout and sharp teeth mortally injure the prey before it even drowns. Gajios are extremely successful predators due to their brutality, but also due to their patience and intelligence. A Gajios may give up on a specific prey for the time being if it ventures too far onto dry land, where the Leviathan cannot follow, but remember it and pursue it again if their paths cross anew. It is this ferocity and tenacity that allows the Gajios to rule the Fallow River, with some individuals even making their way down south into the windward plains, where they feed on thirsty desert dwellers. But the Gajios do not go unopposed. A second species of Leviathan serves as their main predatory rival. Along the entire Scarlet River, one may encounter packs of Piragill. These leviathans are slender and light, with a row of unique bladed fins running down their back. Unlike the solitary Gajios, Piragill form hunting groups, and are generally believed to lead social lives. That might be due to their relatively low physical strength. Unlike the Gajios, a single Piragill simply does not have the musculature to overwhelm and subdue prey. As a pack, however, Piragill make use of their agile bodies to surround and confuse prey that wades into the water, where these leviathans display extraordinary speed and maneuverability. Individual Piragill have been found to be rather timid, and packs do not seem to have a bespoke leader. Instead, the pack circles the prey until their mutual presence has allowed each member to build up enough courage to leap at their victim all at once, attempting to shred it to pieces with their blade fins as they coil their bodies around and graze their target. It is a surprisingly effective hunting method, albeit likely not as generally successful as that of the Gajios. A belief supported by the fact that the Piragill are entirely endemic to the Scarlet Forest and have never been sighted downstream in the plains. But while mid-sized predators might be able to secure food reliably in the waters of the forest, it is not they who rule this jungle. Like any known wild zone, the Scarlet Forest is home to numerous large monsters, whose lives are what shape the day-to-day activities in the forest. And just like the small and mid-sized inhabitants, the large monsters of the forest also follow a seasonal cycle, with certain species becoming more dominant during certain times of the year. And there is perhaps no monster that is as synonymous with the Scarlet Forest's fallow as the Lala Barina. This black and white temnoceron is native to the Scarlet Forest and can easily be identified by the coat of white fur that covers the head and abdomen of the creature. Like all temnocerons, the Lala Barina strongly resembles the much smaller arachnids, with some key differences. It possesses 6 limbs, 4 of which are used for walking. The anterior pair of limbs is modified into specialized pedipalps that grow hair and, curiously, feature clawed pincers. Unlike the other 2 key species in the temnoceron monster class, the Lala Barina has comparatively small chelicerae that cannot be extended much past their usual apparent length. The Lala Barina is a carnivorous predator that actively hunts in the Scarlet Forest during the fallow. As is typical for a temnoceron, it does so not by the merits of brute strength, but rather through use of a special ability. The abdomen of the monster, which usually tapers into a fluffy tip, can actually be opened up like a blossoming flower, revealing a mass of specialized red bristles called florets. By shaking its expanded abdomen, the Lala Barina can detach these florets intentionally, scattering them across the air as they float around due to their twisting shape. These florets contain a paralytic toxin that is administered upon touch. A single prick of a Lala Barina floret is not nearly strong enough to cause any meaningful effect in animals larger than small rodents, but because these florets float around in cloud-like formations containing hundreds of them, they can indeed end up paralyzing even large monsters rather quickly. Once a victim is incapacitated, the Lala Barina drags it back into the species' nesting grounds, which lie in the south of the forest. Here, the victim is spun into the temnoceron's net, where they remain until the monster chooses to feed on them. Should the paralytic toxin of its florets not be enough, the Lala Barina has other ways of securing prey and standing its ground against adversaries. Its clawed pedipalps can be used both for slashing at enemies and punching them through quick, jittery movements. When the abdomen is expanded, the monster can also attempt to launch clusters of florets directly at a target to try and incapacitate them that way. Alternatively, the Lala Barina also has a stinger hidden among the florets, which it can use to administer a much more potent version of its toxin instantly. But perhaps its most interesting combat maneuvers are the pirouettes it will perform when cornered. By leaping into the air and spinning around, the Lala Barina can reposition itself while slashing at its enemies with special spikes that protrude from the joints on its legs, and which end up serving as horizontal blades when taking on this bizarre stance. Ever since its discovery, the main focus of Lala Barina research has been to uncover how exactly its paralytic toxin works. The impetus for the scientific tenacity was the observation that the red color of the florets seemed to match the color of the river during the fallow perfectly. An ecosystem is ultimately a web of connections between different species and environmental factors, and observations like these are often hints at how these connections manifest. Rigorous research has since revealed a few key aspects of the Lala Barina's florets. The actual paralytic agent is produced inside of the Temnoceron's body, but in order to be activated into a toxic component, it needs to first mix with water. So a portion of the water that the Lala Barina drinks is added to the paralytic agent, resulting in a thick scarlet mucus. This mucus exits the body at the abdomen and quickly solidifies into the bristles that are colloquially called florets. So it appears that the red-colored water of the forest ends up coloring the florets of the Lala Barina as well. Another observation that has, however, complicated the situation is that on the rare occasions when Lala Barina are spotted in seasons other than the fallow, their florets are still scarlet, despite the water being clear again. This has led to some diverging theories, with one popular one suggesting that whatever component turns the water red during the fallow might also be crucial for the development of these florets. So, according to this theory, Lala Barina come out during the fallow to drink the scarlet water and stock up on their paralytic florets. However many they manage to produce then form the stockpile they have access to until the next fallow season. Another hypothesis suggests that the red color of the florets serves to enhance their efficacy. As they are the same color as the fallow river, they are nearly invisible once they land in the water, thus increasing the chance of a victim accidentally paralyzing itself while walking through the river. But either way, nothing has been determined for sure yet, and more research remains necessary. The Lala Barina is, however, not the only major species that emerges during the fallow. The Scarlet Forest is in fact home to 4 large monster species that battle for supremacy during the fallow season, separated into 2 strata of ecological dominance. In the lower tier, Lala Barina commonly clashes with its main rival in the forest, the Doshaguma. While this fanged beast is known to wreak havoc in the Windward Plains, its native habitat is actually the Scarlet Forest. Doshaguma are violent opportunists that seek out weakened ecosystems and attempt to establish themselves as a dominant species temporarily. To do so, they chase the fallow season, which rewards brute strength over clever evolutionary adaptations. It was through studying the Doshaguma that the expedition team began to understand how the seasons link up between locales. When the Windward Plains is in fallow, the Scarlet Forest is in plenty, and vice versa. These relationships do not seem to be 100% consistent, but it is a basic framework from which to work from. Doshaguma prefer the rough competition of the fallow, and thus venture into the plains when the forest is in plenty, returning when the waters begin to turn red. Curiously, this also affects the social behavior of the Doshaguma. In the plains, they congregate into packs that brutalize prey relentlessly, while in the forest, this species is generally solitary. It has been theorized that the scarcity of life in the fallow plains requires the usually individualistic Doshaguma to band together and hunt as a group, while the comparative abundance that the forest provides even during its fallow season allows them to indulge their solitude. Despite their brutish appearance, Doshaguma appear to be quite sensitive to the environments around them and adapt their behavior on the fly, which is why researchers believe that it might hold the key to deepening our understanding of the Eastlands as a whole. But while the Doshaguma and Lala Barina may compete violently for resources, they remain firmly in the lower strata of the large monster hierarchy in the forest's fallow. They too must live in fear of the true rulers of this season. For above the scarlet waters, a crimson king makes its sovereignty known with a roar. Rathalos, the fierce males of the Wrath species, are feared across all known territories, and the Eastlands are no exception. Easily recognizable by their red armor shells with black accents, these flying wyverns are exceptionally dangerous and dominate most ecosystems they reside in. They do so through unmatched aggression and truly magnificent aerial mobility. An airborne Rathalos is a mesmerizing display of agility and mastery, capable of sharp turns and maneuvers that leave enemies dazed through the sheer artistry of its motions. Usually, the sight of a Rathalos flying overhead is enough to send all inhabitants of the Fallow Forest into fearful hiding. None dare evoke the Sky King's wrath. While Rathalos live in the forest year-round alongside their female mates, the Rathians, their presence and aggression increases notably during the fallow. The social dynamics between the sexes in the Wrath species is one of the most researched topics in Hunter's Guild history, so this seasonal behavior was immediately made a matter of high scientific priority. It was soon noted that while Rathalos become more active during the forest's fallow, Rathians begin appearing in the plains plenty season, which happens at the same time. From decades of prior research, it is known that this species forms either breeding pairs or harems, and that generally, female Wraths are tasked with procuring food, while male Wraths dedicate themselves to protecting the pair's territory. With that in mind, it has been suggested that Eastland Wraths are broadly native to the Scarlet Forest, but that the arrival of the fallow pushes the female Rathian to seek food in the adjacent windward plains during its plenty season. In the absence of the females, the male Rathalos spend more time patrolling the territory and defending it against perceived intruders, to ensure that the females have a nest to come back to. And defend that territory they do, with ferocious authority and violence. Rathalos are not called Kings of the Skies for nothing, after all. Using their excellent eyesight, they spot enemies from far above and swoop down to deliver swift assertion of their dominance. Just like the females, Rathalos possess numerous weapons besides just their physicality. While the Rathian had venomous barbs across her back and tail, the Rathalos secretes venom from its talons, an adaptation that empowers its ability to attack from above, feet first. This may make the venom strikes of the males less practical when the monster is grounded, but it also prevents it from losing access to its toxin, as injuring or severing the tail does not remove this ability the way it does in the females. The other devastating weapon that the Rathalos employ is of course the species' signature flame breath. Derived from their various flammable body fluids, Wraths produce a flammable powder that is stored in a dedicated organ called a flame sac. When stimulated, this flame sac can funnel the powder and various other fluids into the throat of the monster, creating a dancing fire. This is Wyvern's Fire, one of nature's greatest wonders. This highly destructive flame reacts violently to both air and pressure, two factors that the Wraths manipulate to change the properties of their flame breath. When the desired characteristics have been gained, the Wraths can then release the fire by spitting it out as powerful flame blasts, which can easily incinerate targets and devastate the area around them. While the males are not as proficient at concentrating this flame as the females, and can thus not use it in its most destructive form, the Rathalos makes up for that by launching fireballs from the air with extreme precision and speed. Coupled with their general aerial mobility, Rathalos can rapidly raze large areas to the ground. It is no wonder then that most inhabitants of the forest simply avoid its gaze, as a rampaging Rathalos could easily spell disaster. Perhaps aware of its terrifying reputation, the Rathalos makes a point out of circling the forest during the fallow, leaving scale fragments and claw marks behind as markers of its presence. No matter where you go in the fallow woods, remember, the king is watching you. While the Rathalos is the apex predator of the Scarlet Forest during the fallow, that does not mean he goes entirely unchallenged. There is one species that may not directly compete with this flying wyvern for food, but whose territorial aggression and combat ability make it a worthy opponent in the occasional turf wars. For in the waters of the forest, one may sometimes encounter a Mizutsune. These sleek, beautiful leviathans are known for their characteristic fins and graceful movements. Their elegant appearance, however, belies a truly nasty temper, as Mizutsune are extremely territorial and will assault any intruder violently. And that includes the oh-so-untouchable King of the Sky. When left to their own devices, Mizutsune are voracious fish eaters. They spend much of their time either in the water or near it, looking for any potential meal. Should they spot a fish, they will swallow it whole immediately. This greedy feeding behavior and broad prey selection leads Mizutsune to ingesting various materials by proxy, as it also takes in anything eaten by its prey, leading to an immense variety of substances within its gut. And it is this variety that fuels the Leviathan's most incredible ability. Through an unknown process, the various substances it ingests are broken down and repurposed into a unique synovial fluid. By expelling this fluid from their body surface and mixing it with the water in their surroundings, Mizutsune create a soap-like foam that can serve many different purposes. For one, it can enhance the Leviathan's agility. By covering its body in a thin layer of this foam, the Mizutsune can glide across most types of terrain with ease, outmaneuvering adversaries and traversing a variety of territories. The Mizutsune's slender body is perfectly suited to such swift movement, aided by the specialized features on its feet. On the bottom of them, Mizutsune have smooth pads that, when covered in foam, allow the beast to glide with almost no friction. In order to control this movement, the Mizutsune grows specially enlarged claws on its feet, which can be extended downwards to dig into the ground and stop the gliding at once. The secondary purpose of this foam relates to the Mizutsune's sensory abilities. On the underside of its broad tail, the Mizutsune grows tufts of thick purple fur. When the foam passes through this fur, either by itself or through the Mizutsune directing it by swinging its tail, it creates large bubbles that float around in the vicinity of the monster with surprising longevity. These bubbles are more robust than they seem, and will only pop once they make contact with another creature. In turn, the Mizutsune has adapted to being able to hear these pops even from far away. The large fins on its head directly connect to the Leviathan's small ears, and the long whiskers aid in picking up vibrations through the air. This allows the Mizutsune to survey a large area, using its bubbles as sentries that alert their master if they collide with intruders. Should such an alert reach the Mizutsune, it will dash towards whatever triggered it and attack relentlessly. The high agility of the monster allows it to perform devastating swipes and slams with its body, while its long claws can slash enemies apart if a hit connects the right way. But not only is the Mizutsune extremely fast and mobile, its presence also impedes the movement of its adversary. The bubbles that previously served as sentries can also be weaponized during battle by popping near an enemy and covering them in slippery foam, causing them to lose control of their movement. Slipping and sliding haplessly, many a victim finds itself overwhelmed by the Bubble Fox's might. Even if an enemy keeps their distance, the Mizutsune can still assault them using a pressurized water beam that can be spat from the mouth. The bubbles that the Mizutsune produces are also known to come in different variations, with some including curatives and stimulants. This appears to be a consequence of the synovial fluid's inconsistent composition. As it is derived from an incredible variety of substances, its exact makeup is also quite varied, and the Mizutsune can elect to secrete different variations of its fluid depending on the needs of the moment. And it is one of those fluid variations that has made the Eastland Mizutsune particularly tantalizing to the Hunters Guild. As a battle intensifies and the Leviathan grows more irate, it has been observed to begin producing dark blue bubbles made of an oily, flammable substance, many of which catch fire as soon as they form. These blue flame bubbles are highly destructive on impact and constitute the Mizutsune's greatest weapon. The beast can also directly spit out this volatile oil from its mouth, causing short-ranged flame blasts. If the Mizutsune is enraged and injured in a fight, one may even witness blue flames bursting forth from its eyes as its bubbles ignite all at once. What makes this so peculiar is that regular Mizutsune outside of the Eastlands have never been seen making use of this so-called foxfire. Instead, this ability had previously only been observed in the extremely rare deviants of this species, the Soul Seer Mizutsune. By resurfacing old research done by the Academy, a partner organization of the guild, the expedition team was able to shed some light on this odd connection. Based on scholarly findings, Soul Seer Mizutsune are elderly individuals that have gone blind and must rely exclusively on their hearing and vibration sense to hunt. While their senses are highly developed, it still limits the kind of prey they can catch to generally larger and slower fish. One such prey is the burst arowana, which are known to be the staple food of Soul Seer Mizutsune. Burst arowana are also known to produce an explosive chemical compound in their bodies, often used for weapons crafting by the Hunters Guild themselves. Since the properties of the Mizutsune's synovial fluid are derived from its diet, this interaction results in the Soulseer Mizutsune producing these destructive foxfire bubbles. Burst arowana have been confirmed to live in the waters of the Scarlet Forest, so it is possible that Eastland Mizutsune favor them as prey, to the point where they can all make use of this ability that was considered rare back west. The flaming eyes are another indicator that this connection might indeed be real. In the Soulseer Mizutsune, it had been observed that the extracted chemicals from burst arowanas had a particular tendency to form deposits in and around the eye sockets, igniting into these impressive blue flames when the monster's body temperature rised during intense agitation. This interaction seems to occur nearly identically in the Eastland Mizutsune as well. It must be noted, however, that Mizutsune are not overall an aggressive species. Rather, the individuals catalogued and encountered by the Hunters Guild are specifically the males of the species, identifiable by their large, sail-like fins on the head and back. Female and juvenile Mizutsune have smaller fins, and are believed to live largely peacefully in colonies. Male Mizutsune, however, are solitary, and while they are not particularly problematic most of the time, their aggression is believed to increase dramatically during the mating season. This is when they are most easily encountered, which is why when monster hunters refer to Mizutsune colloquially, they generally mean the males specifically. While it is unknown why the males become so aggressive at this time, one potential explanation has linked this behavior to the monster's fins. The fins of a Mizutsune are known to be very expressive, changing color and position in tandem with the Leviathan's mood. They are at their most colorful and vibrant when a Mizutsune is consumed by wrath, so their aggression might be a way to bring out the brightest and most beautiful colors in their fins, which could be a factor in mate selection. But alas, all of this remains mere speculation for the time being. In the Eastlands, male Mizutsune are most commonly sighted during the Scarlet Forest's fallow, which has led researchers to suggest that their mating season might partially line up with that season. And so, as wyverns soar through the cloudy sky and leviathans rule the Red River, the Scarlet Forest's fallow plays out, a dance of scarcity and competition. In the oppressive humidity and dreary light, one may feel trapped, as if the grasp of the fallow is unyielding and eternal. But it is not. The drizzling rain during this season is both a defining feature and also an omen of what's to come. As humidity builds in the region and the cloud layer above the forest gradually develops, the time draws near for one of nature's great spectacles. Like all biomes of the Eastlands, the Scarlet Forest too experiences an inclemency, a violent weather event that signals the end of the fallow. In the Scarlet Forest, this event takes the form of a sudden cloudburst. Winds lash the trees as a torrential rain pounds the forest relentlessly. The colorful, varied jungle is transformed into a dark abyss, where the rainfall's roar drowns out all other sound, and where a haze of splashing water reduces visibility to near zero. This is the event known as the Downpour. While this is still broadly considered a natural event, there are some oddities surrounding the Downpour that continue to puzzle the guild. The hexagonal structures that peek out between the fused bark of the region's tree hives take on an eerie, milky glow during this storm. This is reminiscent of the glowing aura that surrounds the wind's gasp during the plains inclemency, leading to theories about these structures being ancient machines that amplify or control these inclemencies. Whatever the case may be, the largest trees of the Scarlet Forest can be seen glowing in the rain, hinting at the mysteries that remain beyond our grasp. Like all inclemencies, the downpour is a sudden shift that exerts an immense amount of pressure onto the ecosystem of the Scarlet Forest. All inhabitants must be ready to adapt to it at all times, as the violently swelling river can easily sweep them away or otherwise harm them. The general strategy is to simply find shelter and hide while waiting for the storm to pass. Some larger species, such as the Rathalos or Mizutsune, may attempt to remain active during this time, but even they must tread carefully. Not only does the rain disrupt their ability to defend themselves, but it also hides something sinister behind its veil. As the clouds release their torrent and the waters swell, something slithers into the forest, initially unseen, but instantly feared. This dark presence does not usually reside in this region, but its presence during the downpour is a factor all inhabitants must consider and prepare for. As the waters of the Scarlet River belong to one species, and one species only, the Uth Duna. This unusual leviathan reigns as the apex predator of the Scarlet Forest, and is known to appear during the downpour. Unlike many other monsters in this class, the Uth Duna is massive and heavy, with a thick, lemon-shaped body bursting with dense muscles. While it is believed to usually reside in the deeper waters adjacent to the forest, it does occasionally make the trip into the forest itself, most commonly during the inclemency, but rarely also in other seasons. And every time, its presence changes the dynamics in the forest drastically. That is due to the sheer force of nature that the Uth Duna represents. Its muscular frame, sharp teeth, and thick defensive hide make it a formidable powerhouse that can hunt just about anything in the forest. And unlike the apexes of other regions, it does so not through utilizing some advanced elemental ability or adaptation, but through pure brute force. By crashing its massive body into enemies or walloping them with one of its muscular front limbs, the Uth Duna can crush bones and shatter victims with ease. Despite its heavy frame, the Uth Duna can dart across the water's surface rapidly thanks to its strong legs, making it both a fast and devastating physical attacker. That is, however, not to say that the Uth Duna uses no special weapons to enhance its already impressive physicality. Besides its stout shape, another unusual feature of this leviathan are the long tentacles that sprout from various spots on the body, such as the head, shoulders, and wrists. These tentacles, which can be folded flat against the body when not in use, are covered in strands of long, thin hair called ciliae. At their thinnest, these hairs are almost invisible to the naked eye, and yet their extension from the tentacles forms an impressive, near imperceptible sheet around the Uth Duna. The tentacles of the Uth Duna secrete a special mucus that drips down through these hairs, usually covering every single cilia in a thin layer of it. By then swirling its ciliae around in the river water and mixing the mucus on them with it, the Uth Duna creates massive liquid sails around itself, adhered to its tentacles and held together by the mucus surface tension and the structural stability offered by the ciliae. These veils serve numerous purposes. For one, they offer a degree of additional protection. When fully veiled, an Uth Duna is surprisingly difficult to hit, as all attacks land instead on the veil's watery surface. But more crucially, the veils increase the monster's combat power. All that water attached to the body makes the Uth Duna even heavier than it was before, adding more heft to its slams and punches. And because these veils follow the Leviathan's movements, they also cause waves and currents in the surrounding water whenever the beast moves, hindering an enemy's movements and making them an even easier target. The veils are, however, not without downsides. Their added weight slows the Uth Duna down, a trade-off for the power increase. Additionally, they cannot be sustained indefinitely under combat conditions. If they are attacked often enough, the surface tension of the mucus will break, and the veil will disintegrate all at once. This process is so sudden that it can even daze the Uth Duna for a short time, and the Leviathan cannot recreate the veil until it has replenished its mucus, which is not a fast process either. This one weakness aside, the Uth Duna dominates the Scarlet Forest during the Downpour, as the swelling river massively expands the areas it can access without having to entirely leave the water. Hunting anything from fish to large prey, it is a voracious and aggressive species that does not tolerate rivals in its turf. Should it spot a potential adversary, it will chase them down relentlessly and attempt to crush them under its massive body. But the Downpour too is only a transient state. Once the last waters have fallen and the clouds begin to clear, the Uth Duna may briefly bask in the sunlight before retreating back into the abyss from whence it came. The heavy rain subsides and the waters, having their flow flushed by the sudden torrent, regain their natural blue color, with a surface that reflects the beaming sun like 1,000 tiny mirrors. As the sing-song of birds begin to echo across the treetops, and a vibrant array of colorful flowers explodes from the soil, all forest dwellers breathe a sigh of relief. Gone is the hour of strife, for the plenty has arrived. In this season, everything is in full bloom. Vegetation extends to its largest and juiciest forms, which in turn allows herbivores to grow fat and happy. Herds of Dalthodon begin moving in large numbers across the forest, grazing on the colorful buffet with little concern for predators. The various leviathans of the forest are equally disinterested in them. While a Gajios may occasionally try its luck on a passing juvenile, it is a much safer bet to simply feed on the countless fish that emerge during this season. And so, the forest turns from a scarlet battleground into a shining paradise of abundance. This abundance manifests even in the very air of the Scarlet Forest. While during the fallow it was stagnant and humid, in the plenty it is fresh and pleasant. And, more crucially, teeming with small, colorful butterflies. These are Myriads, maybe the most exemplary symbol of the plenty. They are entirely absent in all other seasons, as they are either pupating or still inside their eggs. But once the plenty arrives, pupating adults and hatchlings alike burst forth into the air all at once, filling the forest with the gentle strokes of their tiny wings. The Myriads spend their time in the limelight growing and mating, as they must lay their eggs and pupate before the season changes. Some precocious hatchlings can even choose to pupate in the middle of the season, becoming adults and mating at the end of it, thus completing their full life cycle in a single plenty. But while they are active, the Myriads form the bedrock of the Scarlet Forest's food chain, as they feed both flora and fauna with their high nutritional value and population density. The Myriads are, however, just one of the many species of insect that come to life in the plenty. While the fallow saw the rise of various bugs that thrive on humidity, this season is marked by the presence of flying insects that buzz around happily in the sparkling light. Some of the fallow insects do remain active at this time though, such as the jewel scarabs. Their favorite feeding grounds, the red sap trees, close up the flow of their sweet sap by clogging their outlet with a chunk of solidified sap during the plenty. This does not seem to fully deter the jewel scarabs, as they can still be found crowding the trees, attempting to nibble on the sap chunk for a sweet treat. The jewel scarabs seen during the plenty are, however, notably more jittery and nervous compared to their disposition during the fallow. During the day, they hoard around the sap chunks in a hurry, because they know that once night falls, they must either run or face the ire of a particularly nasty species. Hercudrome, another kind of beetle, which can easily be recognized by the distinct dual horn that grows out of its head. These nocturnal bullies appear once the sun sets, their loud buzzing forewarning all other insects to immediately vacate the red sap trees. Unlike the scarabs, which only have small appendages to crack through the solid sap slowly, the Hercudrome can use its massive horns to break off chunks of the sap and gorge itself on them without much difficulty. It is also known to wield this horn as a deadly weapon if some lesser insect or bug attempts to usurp it from its feeding spot. With the rising abundance of food during the plenty, numerous species in the forest indulge in such feeding frenzies. One of them does so loudly, with shrieks that echo through tree canopies and over the water's surface. While they appear in some capacity throughout the entire year, the plenty is when Harpios truly thrive in the Scarlet Forest. These blue and yellow winged drakes are fish eaters, and thus spend the fallow season fighting over scraps and avoiding larger predators. But as the fish populations in the river and the reservoir lake explode during the plenty, so too do the Harpios fly out into the open with pride and confidence. Just as the emergence of the Myriads emboldens entire food chains on land and in the air, so too do the waters of the forest have their own bedrock species, in the starduster. These small schooling fish appear in large groups during the plenty and are highly nutritious, feeding larger fish which in turn feed larger predators. Harpios are not picky eaters and will gladly both devour stardusters and their larger predators. Watching a group of Harpios circle a cluster of fish and pick them off for food is quite a sight, especially considering the Harpios' bizarre physiology. Normally, this drake sports a short snout, with a large sailed head adorned with a back-facing horn. This structure is fairly standard in many flying species, as it helps in cutting through the air while traveling. But strangely, when it is time to feed, the head of the Harpios transforms. The horn slides forwards until it appears to be sprouting from the snout, forming a spear-like protrusion from the face. Once the horn is positioned this way, the Harpios dive into the water head first, impaling fish on their spears to devour once they are airborne again. The abundance of the plenty season is celebrated by all inhabitants of the forest. Those that spent the rest of the year cowering in fear or growling in hunger now rejoice as the jungle erupts in a cacophony of life. The Mimiphyta, which had previously hidden itself among the fungi of the fallow, now stands upright, instead mimicking a species of tall flower that emerges during the plenty. Balancing on its tail and hiding its face between its large ears, the Mimiphyta gleefully catches myriads with its hands, snacking on bugs all day as it enjoys the warm forest air. Of course, not all tenants of the Scarlet Forest are as pleasant and quaint. Like all ecosystems, the forest also has its share of ruffians. And while they are largely timid and withdrawn during the fallow, troops of Conga emerge at the start of the plenty to cause trouble and mischief. These pink-fanged beasts are infamous in the Western Territories, and the expedition team was able to confirm their existence in the Eastlands as well. Patrolling the forest in groups, the omnivorous Conga sniff around with their large, bulbous snouts, looking for fruits, mushrooms, roots, and any other morsels of food. This species of fanged beast sports a characteristic feeding adaptation in which the upper lip and teeth are fused together at the front of the mouth into a hardened, serrated plate, which enables the Conga to crack open hard shells and dig through soil with its mouth. Their favorite food, however, is mushrooms, and during the plenty, they can commonly be spotted gorging themselves on various seasonal fungi. They do also sometimes venture out during the fallow, as the more common mushroom patches during that time are quite attractive. But between the Doshaguma and the Rathalos, that season is quite dangerous for the medium-sized Conga, which is why this species is broadly considered to favor the plenty. One is unlikely to encounter a Conga all by itself. They are a highly social species, forming large troops that travel, feed, and rest together. It is important to note, however, that they do not cooperate much. Conga simply seek out each other's company for protection and companionship, not for strategic guile. Research has shown that they do have some manner of hierarchy amongst each other, seemingly related to the shade and quality of their pink fur. The appearance of a group of Conga is often foretold by their most infamous characteristic: an unbelievably foul stench. Due to their varied diet, which includes many different types of mushrooms, the contents of a Conga stomach are highly volatile. Luckily, this species has a body that has adapted to this lifestyle, with specialized enzymes in the stomach that can neutralize harmful compounds and even toxins. However, the result of this chemical cocktail is that the Conga are constantly producing a variety of gases inside their bellies, which they commonly expel as flatulence. Conga gas is, in all of its variations, utterly rancid, foul enough to cause seizures in the throats of those that inhale it. Conga are in turn instinctually aware of this property and use it as their primary method of self-defense by expelling gas at attackers to deter them. While these beasts do sport long claws, those will not help much against the territorial Rathalos, and so they turn to the stench for aid. A troop of Conga can be a foul-smelling, bothersome lot, but they are also, by themselves, fairly docile. They would much rather spend their time eating than fighting over territories, so they tend to keep to themselves. Conga can quite often be found in the eastern zones of the forest, where they hoard around the massive honey cliffs and spend entire days just feeding on them. However, sometimes confrontations are inevitable in the Scarlet Forest. When the troop is in danger, or when one of their favored feeding spots is occupied by a rival, the Conga rely on their alpha leader, a large individual called the Congalala. These are older Conga that have undergone a massive growth spurt and seized control over their troop. They sport larger bellies, more developed claws and tails, and, most curiously, a cone-shaped crest on the top of their head. This is not a naturally developed structure, and is instead formed intentionally by the Congalala. Once a Conga grows large enough to become an alpha, it will seek out fruit and plant juices and use them like a gel to style its usually messy green head fur into an odd cone. Once shaped and hardened, this cone represents the Congalala's authority over its troop. Not that this authority amounts to much, though. The uncooperativeness of Conga means that a Congalala cannot give orders or execute strategies. Rather, it defends the troop's territory through its size and extremely odorous dung markings. If an enemy decides to harass the troop, the Congalala can spring into action to defend its smaller brethren. When a Congalala spots a potential danger, it will first perform its signature threat display. Standing up as tall as it can, the Congalala stretches its arms to its side to appear as large as possible. It then shakes its abdomen and releases a small puff of gas from its rectum. This display, which can sometimes be observed in Conga as well, sends a clear message. I have a belly full of noxious gas, and I will spray you with it if you come too close. It can further intensify this display by flushing its face and backside with blood, turning them bright red as a flashing warning. Should an adversary not heed this warning, the Congalala goes on the offensive. Besides attempting to douse its target in its gas, the Congalala is also physically imposing, as its large claws and heavy body can inflict serious damage on opponents, especially if they are currently busy choking on the beast's foul flatulence. The Congalala also displays more sophisticated use of its gas. While the smaller Conga can only expel their gas through their backside, a Congalala can also choose to exhale it through its mouth, not unlike the elemental breaths of various wyvern. The beast's mastery over gas goes even further still. Congalala seem to be instinctively able to discern what properties a particular meal will impart onto their gases, an awareness that they weaponize masterfully. By strategically ingesting specific mushrooms, these fang beasts can alter the properties of their gas, depending on the needs of the situation. Parashrooms lead to paralytic gas, while toadstools result in toxic fumes. Using the highly prehensile leathery tip of their tails, Congalala can also hold onto a specific mushroom for later use, a sign of this vulgar creature's deceptive intelligence. There is even a behavior that so far seems unique to Eastland Congalala, in which an individual will seek out a special black truffle when backed into a corner. This special snack, called Truffle du Conga due to its association with this monster, only grows in this region and bestows multiple elemental properties onto the Congalala's gas when ingested. A Congalala that has consumed this truffle thus becomes a serious threat, as it is even able to exhale clouds of explosive dust. Due to this vast array of abilities, most other creatures in the forest steer clear of Conga troops if they are accompanied by a Congalala. Due to the abundance of food and the reduced presence of monsters like the Doshaguma, Conga troops tend to thrive during the plenty, and their hijinks can at times seem like they dominate the Scarlet Forest. However, there is another species that also begins appearing in large numbers during this time, and while it does not prey on Conga, the Yian Kut-Ku can keep the rowdy apes somewhat in check. These bird wyverns were among the first monsters to be classified by the Hunters Guild back in its early days, and are thus very well known. Covered in a characteristic pink armor shell, the Yian Kut-Ku struts around the forest looking for its favorite food, subterranean worms. The large disc-shaped auricles behind its head serve as extended ears that are capable of sensing small vibrations under the monster's feet, allowing it to pinpoint the locations of tasty grubs. Once a meal has been found, the Yian Kut-Ku uses its gigantic beak like a shovel to dig up its prey and swallow it whole. As it relies on digging for food, the Yian Kut-Ku generally sticks to the forest ground, only using its wings to fly when rising up to its nesting ground in the north. While much was already known about the Yian Kut-Ku from many encounters with it in the west, the Eastland variation was still able to surprise the expedition team. The Kut-Kus encountered in western regions like Schrade have been broadly observed to be solitary, only briefly seeking out their peers during the breeding season. But during the plenty of the Scarlet Forest, Yian Kut-Ku form massive flocks, nesting together in the northern ruins in subgroups of 3 to 6 individuals. While this was initially believed to be an extension of the usual breeding colonies, the complete absence of eggs or courtship behavior has so far rendered that hypothesis unlikely. The plenty can broadly be described as a hot season, which is when western Kut-Ku are known to seek mates, but this social behavior is beyond any previously observed cases. For that reason, various theories have emerged, including one that posits that Eastland Kut-Ku have evolved to be more social with each other, to take advantage of the plenty season more efficiently, allowing them to stockpile nutrients to then survive the harsher weather conditions of the fallow and the inclemencies. Whatever the reason may be, the observable reality is that during the plenty, the Scarlet Forest is patrolled by numerous cadres of Yian Kut-Ku, looking for food together as they stalk the forest floor. Their presence is what balances out the mischief of the Conga, as the two species generally engage in intimidation and light roughhousing that usually leads to them avoiding each other. Like many mid-sized monsters, the Yian Kut-Ku is known to perform a threat display, in which it extends its wings and stomps its feet to appear larger and more dangerous. Should a fight turn more serious, the Yian Kut-Ku will display the abilities that have long since designated it as the mandatory wake-up call for cocky greenhorn monster hunters. The pink shell of the Kut-Ku is deceptively hard, able to repel attacks from claw and tooth alike. This impact resistance and general defense allows the Yian Kut-Ku to be quite reckless, as it attempts to trample foes or crush them with its massive beak. This wyvern also possesses a flame sac, which allows it to produce and spit a volatile liquid that ignites upon making contact with air. These flaming globs are highly destructive and can linger on the surfaces they impact, adding to the danger they pose. These abilities already made lonesome Kut-Kus fairly formidable, but in a pack, this species can wreak serious havoc. Fireballs flying in all directions, stampeding wyvern feet that trample the earth, shrieks overlapping each other. Fighting an entire pack of Yian Kut-Ku is more trouble than it is worth in nearly all cases, so most other monsters just leave them be. They do, however, not have free reign over the forest. An adventurous Congalala might be able to subdue and repel a group of Kut-Kus, depending on various unpredictable factors. But both species have to remain wary of the forest royals. While the Rathalos becomes less active in the forest during the plenty, the female Rathian in turn appears more often, looking for food to bring back to its treetop nest. Just like the males, Rathian are extremely powerful flying wyvern with a devastating flame breath and deadly toxins, which the females administer through the tail. And while they are less common in this season, Rathalos will also swoop down to help their mate if a situation gets too hot. So while smaller monsters do get a break from all the strife during the plenty, they cannot fully disregard the threat of the monarchs of land and sky. But these monarchs too cannot fully relax in this season. For as the rains of the Downpour subside, another kind of king arrives in the region, a lord born from the abyssal sea. In the absence of Uth Duna, the apex of the Scarlet Forest in the plenty is without a doubt the Lagiacrus, a large leviathan that reigns over the vast aquatic food chain. With a long, slender body covered in blue scales that allow it to disappear into the depths, this leviathan is perfectly adapted to life underwater. That being said, the Lagiacrus is also capable of venturing and even hunting on land, granting it a significant degree of ecological versatility. It is this versatility, coupled with its immense power, that make the Lagiacrus an extremely oppressive presence in the Scarlet Forest. With its powerful jaws, which sport external pseudofangs in addition to its true teeth, the beast can latch onto large terrestrial prey and drag it underwater, either to drown it or to tear it apart violently. While on land, the Lagiacrus is not nearly as elegant as it would be in water, but it can still move its body quite quickly in a straight line. A head-on collision with the enormous Lagiacrus is thus mostly deadly for its adversaries. Similarly, a swipe from its long, fin-like tail can easily shatter the bones of even large monsters in a single strike. Its long claws are also sharp and deadly, but not used as much due to the relative rigidity of the monster's front limbs. But it is not its sheer physicality that crowns the Lagiacrus as the Lord of the Sea. Instead, this Leviathan commands one of the most devastating elemental abilities ever discovered in monster kind. The hide on the monster's back is lined with specialized white muscles, which contract and relax rapidly alongside the Lagiacrus's regular movements. As this oscillation continues and accelerates, a special compound in the muscles begins producing an electrical charge. This charge travels upwards to the orange-brown spinal protrusions of the monster, colloquially called shell shockers. These shockers are highly porous, with cell structures that can hold the charge produced in the underlying skin and muscle tissue. As the monster builds up this charge as it moves, its shell shockers glow ever more brightly, serving as a final warning to any that would dare defy the creature. Once a critical charge has been reached, the Lagiacrus is free to enhance all of its attacks with electric properties. The ensuing currents are powerful enough to boil the water around the monster and deliver death to any but the most resilient enemies. The Lagiacrus can choose to release the charge as arcing lightning emitted from its shell shockers, incinerating a close area around its torso, or it can veil itself in the charge as it rampages around, zapping even those that manage to avoid making direct physical contact. It can even spit out globs of mucus imbued with this electric charge, causing massive electric explosions at a distance. But all of this pales in comparison to the Leviathan's last resort, a move it only performs once its charge has reached maximum capacity. By curling up and concentrating its entire electrical reservoir, the Lagiacrus can cause a chain reaction discharge that covers a large area and propagates itself for a limited time, utterly massacring anything caught in this attack's wide radius. This electric ability allows the Lagiacrus to dominate the forest, as even the Raths must avoid it due to their shells being highly vulnerable to electrical attacks. It also uses this power to aid in its hunting strategies. While the Lagiacrus is more than capable of hunting both land and aquatic prey without any elemental help, the ability to discharge electricity in water is quite useful. So, it can, for example, release a targeted charge to quickly kill an entire school of fish, which it then feasts on in peace. When hunting larger, more resilient prey, the Lagiacrus may resort to its most spectacular hunting method. By swimming in a circle and using the flaps on its neck hood to manipulate the water current, the beast creates a whirlpool that traps prey in its surge. Then, once the targets are immobilized, the Lagiacrus releases a powerful charge into the vortex, zapping anything caught in its flow. It is this behavior that gave the beast its name. Lagiacrus translates to shining vortex, a reference to the glowing whirlpools that mark a Lagiacrus's hunting style. It was quite a shock to find the Lagiacrus in the Scarlet Forest. Despite being large and very dominant, they are elusive creatures, and the guild has at times gone years without a single sighting. One noteworthy aspect of the Lagiacrus found here is that they are not native to the Eastlands at all, and are thus not considered a regional variation. Instead, Lagiacrus migrate to the Eastlands during the forest's plenty, and then disappear again towards their distant natural habitats. They in fact seem to time their appearance such that they arrive just as the Downpour ends, perhaps to avoid the Uth Duna. As to why the Lagiacrus makes such a long trip to arrive in the Scarlet Forest, it has generally been interpreted as a testament to the sheer abundance and fertility of this region during the plenty. More mysteries still remain about the Lagiacrus, however. For example, early on in its discovery, it was generally accepted that the Lagiacrus could not make full use of its electric abilities when on land, as its charge was not strong enough to overcome the conductive resistance of air. But the Lagiacrus seen in the Eastlands are not only capable of using their charges on land, they are veritable masters at doing so. More research remains necessary to fully unravel what is going on here. And so, the Scarlet Forest blooms into plenty, as creatures small and large thrive in the abundance the season provides. The occasional turf wars and skirmishes do not diminish the tranquility of this time of the year, as the forest's beauty drowns out all conflict. And within that beauty, a certain star makes its comeback. The Dapperwing, which had spent the fallow and inclemency mostly perched under shelter and hiding, can now fly freely, its wing membranes illuminated by the gentle sun. Wherever one looks, these small green birds sit and relax in the fresh forest air, chattering amongst each other with glee. They are all getting ready for the main event of the season. The Dapperwings that remain green during the plenty are the females, while the males develop a mesmerizing variety of coat colors and feather extensions. The most beautiful of these males are even given a new colloquial name, Dazzlewings. These individuals are rapidly changing their plumage for the mating season, as the plenty is their time to shine and impress the females. But looking pretty is only half the battle. Once the males have reached the peak of their vibrance, they begin the arduous task of competing for mates. To do that, they perch themselves atop branches or rocks from which they are well visible, as this will serve as their stage. Once in position, they raise their wings up above their head, forming a heart shape with them and showing off the colors of their wing membranes. By shaking the body and making high-pitched purring sounds, the males attempt to attract a female to them. When a ladybird notices them, it might swoop down for a closer inspection. The males intensify their display, giving their prospective mate a good look of their colors from various angles. If the female is not impressed, she might fly off without a warning. But if the Dazzlewing succeeds, the female Dapperwing flashes her own wing membranes in approval and lets out a celebratory chirp. Dapperwings form pairs that display deep affection towards each other, grooming the other's feathers and huddling together when perched. Through the scarlet fallow and the torrential downpour, in the wake of wyverns and leviathans, these lovers find one another against all odds, basking in the warm light of their kinship. It is a truth that remains as unyielding here in the East as it does in the West, that nature, for all its roiling bravado and dire drama, is ultimately a love story, a romance etched into the sky, the land, and the sea itself. The Scarlet Forest murmurs with the quiet sonnets of the Dapperwings, and it too performs its role in this tale of beauty and hope. Thank you, everyone, so much for watching. I know this one took a little while to come out, but I hope it was worth the wait. As always, a big thank you to everyone who supports the channel through Patreon or YouTube channel memberships. I would like to extend a special thank you to A. Jackson, Admiral Frost, Alistair in Wonderland, Anjanath Tamer's Ambience, Artur Centeno, Austin, Autumns, Black Ace 202, B, Bruggy, British Empire, Chocolate Coat, Claire Miboon, Dragonlord, Dissy, Ethan Toombs, Theopuz, Habo Himbro Mirror, Harpier, Hashi, Hellbug Hunter, Hutsan, I'm Just Happy to Be Here, Inepts, Iron Camel, Jacob Coleman, Jan Steiner, Jacob the Numbnut, Joey Tribby 58, Magenta, Julia Benebig, Yurif, Carl the Crab, Kelly Barnett, Kogath, Lex Aegis, Lieferdienst, Ludicious Flow, Lufish, M1 Have 1 2, Macaroni Leviathan, Makamawi, Makot 02, Matt Hat 124, Meta Defiance, Mr. Pyramid, Molly Mockery, Morgul Blank, My Name Gone, Nils Schlatter, Noah Schantz, Oakwood Tree, Paige Gandalf Soda, Person 212, Precum King, Punonym, Quali, Rambling Robin, Raspberry, Regal Eagle, Resident Neko Arc, Ronger 97, Rose, Ryan Hook, Skiba, Shebo, Sir Newt, Soruka, Tacty Wolf, The Dollarfish, Thick, Unk with Good Puss, Uth Duna is an Octopus, Varaxus, Vulgar Beast, Wandering Soul, Zaffi, Thino Garthia, Zion H.V. Augenson, Zyperius Volkvar, and Kuroneko. Thank you all so much again, and I'll see you around. Take care, everybody. Bye.